Dedicated to geeks and nerds, you're listening to Project I Radio, 24/7 Nerdgasm.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the bizarre and weird fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank Zongers. It's Bizzong Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. God forbid you wait until Sunday to listen to Bizzong. But if that's when you listen, thanks for coming. Don't forget, whenever you decide to tune in and push play, coined by Mr. Kevin Strange himself. Welcome to Zonger Day, Zongers. And what an episode of Bizzong we have for you this week. A legend in the field, a guy who was there before Bizarro was there. Our guest this week is an award-winning author, editor, screenwriter, director, and producer. Does he wash windows too? I don't know. This week, I'd like to welcome to Bizzong a man who is dripping with talent like an electro-fueled butthole. The one and only, the legendary John Skipp. You heard it right, Zongers. John Skipp is our guest this week on the podcast. I'll give you a moment to tape yourself down to your seats, because I know you have all just leapt out of your seats with excitement, and as well you should have. This interview was completely moving for me to do. I couldn't believe, it's one thing to say you're going to talk to John Skipp, but when you get done after this hour, if you're even half as moved as I was, to be honored to talk to the man, listen to him dish out great knowledge, then we're all going to count this as a banner episode for Bizzong. So without further ado and accolades, Zongers, I present to you the interview of John Skipp. It is my honor to introduce to you on Bizzong Podcast this week the one and only Mr. John Skipp. John Skipp, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, man. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, an honor to have you. Is it too much?
It's all good.
Okay, fantastic. Your name, I guess for a lot of people, or most people, sort of evokes the image of horror. They think of horror when they think of you, but you're here on Bizzong, the Bizarro and Weird Fiction podcast, because you have a big, heavy connection there too. Can you tell us how you came to Bizarro?
Well, it's really interesting, man. I always liked the weird shit. The weird shit was what has always had the most appeal for me, and I sort of got into horror because it struck me as a way in which I could talk about serious things in a really intense way, and I knew from some of the writers that I was reading at the time, Harlan Ellison, and somebody turned me on to Stephen King's The Stand, and they said, you would really like this book. And I said, why? I mean, it's a best-selling novel. I'm assuming that it sucks. And they're like, no, actually, you write a lot like this guy. So I started reading The Stand, and in The Stand, almost everybody dies in the first, 100 pages, and there's just bodies laying all over America. This is in the 70s, and I'm reading it and I'm going, you sold 5 million copies of this shit? This is crazy. And not crazy that you sold that many, but crazy that your book is so crazy. So I just started writing hyper intense, very explicit, very angry and engaged and crazy horror shit, and it took off. And it turns out some other people were writing stuff like that too. And then the question of what to call us came up. And Dave Scal, one of the great writers of my era, said, they'll probably wind up calling us Splatterpunks. and like within 15 minutes, it was all over the World Fantasy Convention, and 3 weeks later, we're in the Village Voice and Penthouse Magazine and all these different places talking about this new kind of crazy, kick-ass horror stuff. Fast forward 15 years or so, and I run into Carlton Mellick III, and he tells me, and he's this crazy guy doing these crazy Dr. Evil shows, and he says to me that Skipp Inspector's The Bridge was the novel that told him that he didn't have to write regular, normal novels, and that it was a big influence on him, and that he was also a big fan of my book, The Emerald Burrito of Oz, which I wrote with Mark Leventhal, who used to be the lead guitarist and songwriter for Green Jello back in the 90s, and I'm like, oh, I think you guys are really fucking cool. I read a bunch of their stuff, and then one day, Rose and Carlton got a hold of me and said, we're thinking, because we can't sell books to normal horror or science fiction or fantasy people, we're thinking we're just going to call our genre Bizarro. What do you think about that? And I said, I think it's a really great idea. I think that branding this new angle of attack that you guys are taking will probably serve you really well. And seriously, the values that you value of weirdness and not doing things normally are the values I've always embraced. So fuck it, I'm Bizarro too.
Yeah, I mean, you were there at the ground floor. That's pretty awesome. And your stuff evokes, I sort of call it, Bizarro before Bizarro was Bizarro. And I think of stuff like your work, or even Lansdale has very offbeat stuff.
Absolutely. Lansdale's crazy as shit. I mean, I have a story in my Werewolves and Shapeshifters anthology of his called Fire Dog, about a guy who needs a job, and it turns out that the fire department is hiring a mascot, so he just has to wear the dog suit all the time and learn how to lick his own balls and, retrieve and stuff. And that's how he, keeps his family going. And yeah, I don't, if he's not Bizarro, I don't know what is, when he feels like it. I mean, Joe Lansdale does whatever the fuck he wants, and that's what's great about him, and that's what's great about Bizarro. And I mean, seriously, the antecedents of, or the precedents for Bizarro go back to Alice in Wonderland and children's stories and the myths that crazy people told each other because they had no idea what was actually fucking going on in the world. So I think Bizarro is as old as our ability to try and make sense of this insane world. And you kind of know it's Bizarro if it makes you laugh or makes you go, God, I can't even believe how weird this is.
I always ask this question if anybody comes on the podcast, because the answers are all similar, but they're all unique. So I have to ask you, what is Bizarro to you?
Well, I'll tell you. The explanations that Rose O'Keefe and Carlton and Cameron and those guys have given me stand really well. Number one, Bizarro is the literary equivalent of the cult section in a really cool video store back when video stores existed. And, that's where biker movies and Euro sex exploitation trash mingled with Jodorowsky, David Lynch, Guy Madden, and John Waters. So, on the one level, that kind of says it. I would also say it's the literature of the weird, where weirdness and surprise and novelty are what spaceships and rocket gizmos would be to old-style science fiction, or, a vampire might be to horror or something. And the other one is, Rose said to me once, Bizarro fiction is weird characters in a weird place where weird things are happening to them and they have to do weird things back. And I went, yeah, okay.
Sounds as good
basically,
as
I know it when I see it.
It is that hard sort of thing to put your finger on. It's a lot of things, and it's nothing tangible at the same time.
Well, I mean, there's another literary movement going on right now called the New Weird. And there's been some conversation about what the overlap is between the New Weird and Bizarro. And I think that Bizarro tends to take itself a little less seriously. It's weird. It's the weirdness when it puts on its party pants. But I mean, some Bizarro is really, really dark and really brooding and not funny at all. And like I said, I know it when I see it.
Fair enough. So with that in mind, you have just relaunched Fungasm Press. Excuse me. Our first guest on this podcast was a product of your relaunch of Fungasm. That was Danger Slater in his book "I Will Rot Without You." We'll get more into that later. But what specifically are you looking to present under the Fungasm umbrella? Well,
Fungasm started, and it's interesting you say relaunch because it didn't really go down. It just didn't do anything for a while. I started the line because Laura Lee Barr, a wonderful person, wonderful actress and playwright, just directed her first film last year, first feature film. A couple years back, she came to me and she said, I spent 7 years writing this novel, and I think I'm ready for you to look at it. Would you tell me if it's any good and where you think I should try and sell it? So I read it, and I went, no, this book isn't good. This book is fucking amazing. And I have no idea where you could sell this thing because it's not any category that I can think of. I can't think of a public. I couldn't even take this directly to Eraserhead Press and go publish this as Bizarro because it doesn't fit neatly into any slot, even a slot as slippery as Bizarro. And I started thinking, okay, there needs to be a place for stories like, I mean, where do you peg Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind as a movie? Or where do you peg Geek Love as a book? They're not exactly Bizarro, but they got lots of Bizarro, but they got speculative fiction, they got literary, they got all these things going on, and it's like, fuck. I think the only way to handle this situation is to start a line or books that don't fit any neat category, but that I'm completely in love with and think that other people will love too if they're just given a reason to. Let's call it Fungasm Press. And I got a hold of Rose at Eraserhead and asked her, said flat out, I'd like to do this line. And she said, do it. And so I brought on Laura Lee Barr's book, Haunt. Then went, okay, this book can't be alone. So I ran into a writer named Violet Lavoie, amazing, brilliant writer named Violet Lavoie. And she sold me some short stories, and then I got her first collection, I Am Genghis Cum. I don't know if you've read this shit, but it's just off the charts brilliant and funny and sardonic and dangerous and just punk rock as hell. And so I published Violet. Then she came to me with her second collection called I'll Fuck Anything That Moves and Stephen Hawking. And immediately had to publish that thing. And then like a year went by, and I realized that I really needed to push this line or nobody was ever going to read these cool books that I had put together. So we took it to the next level, and Dangers is one of the first things that I bought. I read I Will Rot Without You. He and his gal, Lisa Lestrange, kind of snuck it to me sideways going, how do we get a book to you? And it's like, oh, you ask me and then I'll read it. Laura Lee Barr came back to me with a second book called Long Form Religious Porn. And of course I had to publish that motherfucker. Discovered through my internet searching for unusual, brilliant writers, a young woman named Autumn Christian, and we wound up doing her new collection, which is called Ecstatic Inferno, and she's just brilliant as can be. She's like, I consider her the Gene Splice baby of Philip K. Dick and Poppy Z. Bright, in that she's got the wild ideas and subversive craziness of 60s and 70s era new wave science fiction with the sensuous, crazed modern Southern Gothic of Poppy, and that whole history from like Flannery O'Connor back, and just this brilliant writer. And then through teaching my Lit Reactor class, I met this woman named Deborah Gray, who is a sessionist, which means that she will wrestle you or tie you up or do a variety. Basically, she does cosplay, she does S&M, she does all kinds of fascinating stuff, and she has these amazing adventures. And so her book of her adventures, which is called Human Furniture, or the quest for the perfect woman, rounded out the new Fungasm wave, and we did that shit up, and people are starting to notice.
So it almost sounds to me like it's your philosophy of I know Bizarro when I see it. You can't put your finger on it, and that's sort of what you're publishing here, right?
That is exactly right. I tend to work by intuition. To me, the rational mind is a backseat driver, and is always trying to figure shit out. But I'm pretty much steering by intuition. And when I read books like these books, I go, "Fuck." Number one, I love this stuff. Number two, I think that I know a lot of people who would love this stuff too if they only knew. So let's do something about that. And the other thing about Bizarro is that it's a fantastic community, and that there's a lot of love and a lot of support and play. Like, we get together and try and do cool shit with each other, and it is not an academic movement. It's really kind of a funky thing. And it has a lot of spirit. I knew the first time I met the Bizarros at conventions that these were the guys I wanted to party with. And then it turns out these are the guys I want to work with. They're my team. They're my family. They're my tribe.
Talking to everybody in the Bizarro community, and this includes myself too, it seems like, Bizarro doesn't find anybody. Bizarro doesn't market itself out beyond itself, but people who need Bizarro find it because they're looking for it. You know what I'm saying? They come to Bizarro. Yes, absolutely, man.
Yeah, the tagline that I put on the Fungasm website was making new friends one sexy brain cell at a time. And, the idea is we're not looking for fans. We're looking for friends. We're looking for people we'd want to hang out with, and because they're the ones that are going to dig this stuff. Okay. And I just think that the world is crawling with cool people who are trying to find each other. And this is our, these are the fucking flares we're sending out into the night, and they're very colorful, and they make you go ooh and want to walk over that way.
It's true, and it speaks to you. You ran a was it a GoFundMe account, GoFundMe campaign?
No, was it the Indiegogo?
Indiegogo.
Yeah, we did an Indiegogo just as a pre-sales event. It wasn't to raise money to make the books, because the books were already being made. It was just to pre-sell them and kind of throw an online party and see if we could meet a simple goal, which we exceeded.
You exceeded it big time. I never, it's rare that I've seen such a successful campaign. I think that's where I got the idea that you were sort of relaunching, because of just the way it was put out there. This this party of books we're releasing onto the world, but you got that thing funded nearly twice over.
Yeah, we did really well, man. We did much better than we thought, and that's great, because that enables us to send out everything that we said we were going to send out, and got all the authors copies of their books that they could go out and then sell. And yeah, everybody at the end of the game, I think everybody came out nicely a little bit ahead with some attention, which was, we just want attention.
I got in on the action. Like I said, I bought Danger's book. It was the first thing I read as soon as I love Danger Slater, my God. But and I'm going to say this with all due respect to every other writer under Fungasm, but my God, when I read that book, I said to myself after I read the last page, I just read the Wonderland Book of the Year award for 2016. The book was incredible. What was your reaction when it came across your desk?
Well, yeah, just kind of stunned. I'm sitting there and reading it. It's one of those things. And again, one of the things that I value most as a literary quality is the element of surprise. And like I described the book in the intro and on the back cover, it's like David Cronenberg's The Fly as directed by Frank Zappa with his claymation genius Bruce Bickford animating it. It comes at you like literary stop motion animation of the craziest type. And important. Okay, I'm just going to tell you flat out. My partner Andrew Cash and I, who I make films with, are seriously looking at I Will Rot Without You as a movie we might want to make, using stop motion and so forth to try and visually capture what he does with his words. But the fact of the matter is, the book is amazing, and it just keeps coming at you and getting more and more deep and brilliant. And I think what's most amazing about it, and it's a quality that quite a few of the Fungasm books share, is that it's really funny. It's got this great sense of humor, but there's also a deep emotional well of tragedy and sorrow underneath it. And so it's one of those things. This is what I say about Laura a lot. It's like, I'm laughing, I'm having such a good time. Why the fuck am I crying all of a sudden? And whether that points to my own deranged. I'm not manic depressive, but I might as well be. Yeah, just fucking riding the teeter totter. But yeah, Danger's book is just a mind blower. And let me also tell you that I just last week agreed to buy his new one, which will be out this summer. Oh, and fantastic. it is also a motherfucker.
Yeah, man. If you could just kidnap him, tie him up in a basement, and force him to put out a book a month, I would really appreciate that.
I'll tell you what. I think he's probably going to give us better work free range if we don't put him in the cage. Because I mean, the dude writes all the time. I agree. All I need to do is I just need to encourage him.
Yes, he's just. I'm blown away. I've been able to follow him. Luckily, I found him early with his first book, and have just watched him grow and rise to the level he's at now. And I think he's not done. He's capable of so much more. And I'm just excited every time something new comes out with him, because you could just see him grow as a writer each and every time.
I think he's just getting warmed up, man.
I agree. All right, but enough about Danger. Back to John Skipp. Now, you're the head editor for Fungasm, but you also had this other project, Ravenous Shadows. What was that about? And is that still going on for you, or is that kind of past?
Oh, no, that thing is dead as dog shit. And I'll tell you that what's really interesting is right at the time that I did Fungasm, I was all of a sudden approached by this company to be their head editor and publish their line of horror, crime, thriller, suspense fiction. And it was to be called Ravenous Shadows. I did that gig for about a year. I think we released 6 books. And it didn't go anywhere, and the person who brought me in dropped out, and the people who were left running it didn't really care much. So basically I had to stick with them until it got to the point where I could get them to give the books back to everybody. It's like, okay, these books aren't going to sell for you. You want to just let the authors have them back, because that would be the best thing to do. Plus a couple of them are getting ready to call lawyers. And and so Ravenous Shadows gave all the books back. And a couple of them I immediately then, the minute Ravenous Shadows was dead, I officially joined Eraserhead and Deadite as like a second editor. So I'm running Fungasm, but I can also acquire Bizarro for Eraserhead and Hardcore Cult Horror for Deadite. So I immediately took two of the books from Ravenous Shadows and took them to Deadite. Those are Tribesmen by Adam Cesare, or Caesar, however you want to pronounce it, and Die, You Bastard, Die by Jan Kozlowski. And they're both fucking great books. I love the Ravenous Shadows line, but it was a purely business enterprise, and nobody really gave a shit but me. So yeah, I hung out with them until I could get everybody's rights back, and then I went straight over to Eraserhead full time. And it was shortly after that it was like, okay, it's time to really put some muscle under Fungasm.
I see. So Fungasm was already a thing. It wasn't birthed from the ashes of Ravenous Shadows.
No. If I hadn't gotten the gig with Ravenous Shadows, which was supposed to be a paying gig, and it didn't work out that well either. If it weren't for that, I would have just gone and edited with Eraserhead and Deadite right at the time. But doing Ravenous Shadows, I could not be then also buying for a competing horror line. So Deadite was out, and so I just put it in my contract. Look, I won't edit for anybody else except for Fungasm, but I am doing Fungasm, and that's all there is to it. And they said, okay.
Fantastic. Now, I'd like to switch gears a little bit off the writing, and I'm sure most people know, but maybe they don't. You're also into screenwriting, you're into directing, producing, you're into movies. And the people who...
I'm a filmmaker.
You are a filmmaker. The people who don't... that I talk to, I'm like, hey, I'm going to interview John Skipp. This is great. And I'm like, who? You know, they're not really into books. I'm like, oh, the guy who wrote Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Is that accurate? You wrote Nightmare on Elm Street 5? You're partially responsible for that?
Oh, God, help me. Craig Spector and I wrote the first draft of Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. And while we were doing that, another producer on the project had another screenwriter do a script. We handed ours in. He handed his in. They loved our story and they hated his, so they fired us and hired him to rewrite ours. And because it's Hollywood. And 6 writers and 13 drafts later, they had the piece of shit that they evidently wanted to make. And one line of our dialogue is left in it, and we had to threaten legal action to get our names on it. And then we saw it and went, oh, fuck, we put our names on what? So I'm not proud of Nightmare on Elm Street 5, but it's true that I was involved in it. And the only good thing that came out of Nightmare on Elm Street 5 for me is that a couple years ago, I guess about 5 years ago, a young man named Andrew Cash came up to me. He was doing a major documentary on the whole Nightmare on Elm Street series called Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, and asked if I would come in and do an interview. And I said, can I tell the truth? And he said, yeah. So I went in with him and Buzz Danger Wallach and Dan Ferens and did this interview. And as a result, Andrew and I have been making movies together ever since. So that the one upshot of that fucking Nightmare on Elm Street thing is that now I have this great guy that I work with all the time.
Well, at least you were able to bring some sort of silver lining out of that whole thing. So
yeah.
Is that really the only positive result of even getting the credit for going on to that thing?
Well, I mean, people bring it up, but then I have to explain that I'm not really proud of it. You know, it's like, hey, John Skipp, author of this enormous piece of shit that's laying in the middle of my living room. You know, no, I'm not proud of that movie at all. I think it's a terrible film. And what's really heartbreaking about it to me is that it could have been good. It could have been really good, and that it helped kill a franchise that was Nightmare 3 is such a good movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's such a... Dream Warriors is just such a great film, and they should have kept going from there, and instead they just kind of fucked it straight down the drain. And so if you ask me if I'm proud of being the plunger that helped sweep Nightmare on Elm Street down the toilet, nah.
I gotcha. That's unfortunate. Was that
I
your?
hope I don't sound like a dick, but God,
That's the truth. It's got to be the truth, and that's what it is. Was that your first sort of experience with big Hollywood, as it were?
Well, that was kind of a clincher. What it really taught me, I mean, the most important thing, aside from meeting Andrew, that I got out of Nightmare 5 is that I was going to have to learn to direct and produce if I was going to be involved in film, because being a screenwriter in Hollywood is the worst job I ever had, except for maybe temping in a legal office for 3 hours before I walked out. I liked working in a gas station better than I like writing for Hollywood, because there's nothing emotionally or soulful at stake in pumping your gas and getting your change. But yeah, I mean, if I wanted to make movies, I had to learn how to actually do it and not just be a writer going, gee, I hope they'll make my movie good, because the answer is they probably won't. Nobody understands or cares about it as much as you do. So I kind of dropped out of writing and everything and kind of disappeared for about 10 years. And a good chunk of that 10 years I spent studying film and going to crashing courses at UCLA and taking these amazing crash courses, like weekend crash courses at the Hollywood Film Institute with this guy named Dove Simmons, who also gave crash courses to Tarantino and Spike Lee and the guy who made used to be married to Madonna. I can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah. Not Jesus. Guy something, right?
Yeah, Guy something.
Yeah.
That guy. But anyway, these classes were really, really amazing because they were total nuts and bolts, no nonsense. You weren't sitting there and talking about theory. I don't need people to explain to me why I should love film or what is important about film. I just needed to know how to make them, where to put the camera, where to put the lights, how to find the money and how to budget and schedule things, and think like a filmmaker, and learn enough about everybody's job so that I can talk with everybody I need to and communicate what I need to say to them. It's what the scientist Buckminster Fuller used to call being a deliberate generalist. Instead of being a specialist who knows everything about one thing and nothing about anything else, be somebody who knows at least enough about everything that they can have a real conversation with anyone. And that's what I sort of had to do with regards to film. And tried to get several movies going, didn't happen, learned a lot. I think the only way to learn film in many ways is just to try and fail until eventually you start making stuff that's good, and then people start to notice. So it's been a long, interesting trip for me, but yeah, I'll tell you, the minute Andrew and I started working together, the quality went up like 1,000,000,000%, and I ain't looking back. The thing with Andrew is, he's a great editor. He is now head editor at DC's Legends of Tomorrow TV series, and just before that, he was working on The Flash. They bring him in because he's got like mad expertise. He knows how to cut like a son of a bitch. And he's also a really great guy and really understands movies and is really easy to work with and just a fucking joy. And so I come in from the writing end. He comes in from the post-production, knowing how to edit and composite and put everything together. And we meet in the middle on directing, in figuring out exactly how we're going to set up and shoot every shot. great thing about working with an editor is he knows how it's going to cut together, so we don't need to shoot anything that isn't going to work, so we don't waste time on set. We come in like incredibly prepared and set it up and knock it down. And one of the things that we do before we even go in and shoot is we'll go out with his iPhone and one person or two with us, and we will block out on location where we're going to do the thing, the fight scene or the action scene, and then we'll go and he'll shoot it with his camera. We'll go back to his house, we'll edit that shit together, and we'll go, okay, these are the shots we need, and those are the only ones we go in and get when we have the whole crew there. So no one's sitting around waiting for us to figure out what we're doing, because we know what the fuck we're doing. And that, it's just, to me, it's just so much fun.
Well, it sounds like you have a much different reaction to working with him than trying to do Nightmare on Elm Street 5. What do you have out there?
That's for sure, man.
Your whole demeanor changed when you're talking about that. What do you have out there that you are proud to hang your hat on?
Oh, man. I would say Tales of Halloween, which came out last Halloween, was a horror anthology film Andrew and I did in conjunction with Neil Marshall, who did, The Descent and Dog Soldiers, and does Game of Thrones, and Mike Mendez, who did Big Ass Spider and The Convent, and Dave Parker, who did The Hills Run Red, and Darren Lynn Bousman, Lucky McKee. We did this anthology film together, and Andrew's and my episode or installment is called This Means War, and it stars the great comedian Dana Gould and James Duvall, who played Frank the Bunny in Donnie Darko, as well as a million other things. And I'm super proud of that shit. And that will be out, I believe, on Blu-ray and DVD this summer, and probably on Netflix for Halloween. Also, coming up in June, Andrew and I worked on a horror film, another anthology called Monsterland. This is put out by the Dread Central guys, and we have our first short we did together, which is called Stay at Home Dad, written by the very brilliant Cody Goodfellow. Oh, I forgot to mention Cody Goodfellow, dude, who I wrote the last goddamn Hollywood movie with for Fungasm Press. He's the other Fungasm guy I forgot. Cody's as genius as genius gets. I've never met a more. When I read his stuff, I go, I could write like that if I was smarter. But he wrote a short film called Stay at Home Dad, which we directed. And it starts with a guy with enormous boobs nursing his baby and crying a lot, and then it gets weird from there. And that's in Monsterland. And Andrew and I also directed the wraparound, which is the thing that's, before the movie, at the end of the movie, and then popping up between the shorts in between, about a crazy guy at the end of the world wandering into a horror movie film festival called Monsterland and watching movies while monsters eat the world. And it's super fun. And a new actor named Josh Lacasse is our fucking Bruce Campbell in this thing. He's just hilarious to watch. I think good things will happen to Josh Lacasse, and Monsterland is going to help. It's really a super fun movie. So I got those two things I'm proud of. We did a music video for a one-man band, Bizarro band called The Slow Poisoner, who you should totally have on your show, Andrew Goldfarb. We did a video called Hot Rod Worm, which is all stop-motion animation with the very brilliant Michael Granberry, who evidently did the swinging penis shots in Anomalisa, the new Charlie Kaufman animated film, and was a robot chicken guy and won an Emmy for some children's show, and it's just a great stop-motion animator. So really love Hot Rod Worm. And I just directed a book trailer, a mini-movie book trailer for Deborah Gray's Human Furniture, which has her, as her character Scarlett, visiting a client in a hotel room with a very specific fetish that involves spy music and getting choked out. So I directed that thing with Deborah, and I also wrote and arranged all the music on it, which is like 60s era groovy bachelor pad / spy movie music with saxophones and vibes and upright bass, and I played a bunch of the instruments, and yeah, you should check that out. It's super fun. Again, when you can tell the difference between when I'm overjoyed with excitement doing things I love with people I love, and when I'm being pushed around by assholes.
It's a completely different gear that you're in. I gotta ask you. You just brought it up, and it's brought the question to mind, because you're a person, as an editor, you're interested in making books sell. You just said you did a book trailer. Do you think?
Yes.
Do you think that effort is worth it, or is that just something you're doing for fun, and if it helps, it helps?
Let me put it to you this way. I think that most book trailers are very uninteresting. I understand it because they're, you get a couple of still images, you get some music that you probably got library or public domain, and then there's the little piece of type that's like, Susan had a terrible secret or something, right? And yeah, it's basically a couple of stills, some music, a little bit of narrative, and then flashing the cover like 3 times. And I don't find that very exciting. However, I think that there are ways. Clearly, advertising can work. Otherwise, the world wouldn't be, like crawling with it like cancer. And yeah, I always sort of figured I would be really good in advertising if it weren't for this having a soul thing. But when it's something that you really, really love, then it turns into something else. Then it's like joyful testimony. So what I want to do with the Fungasm book trailers is I want them to be as entertaining as the books, and I want them to make a great 30-second to 1 minute argument for why you would be really, really interested in this thing. Laura also had a beautiful trailer done for long-form religious porn, and I think that it really, in 1 minute, manages to very spicily encapsulate why this is a great fucking book about Hollywood vampires and sex crime and Jesus. And it's hilarious as hell. So yeah, I think that I want Fungasm to be a line that is distinguished amongst other things by its really cool visual engagement with the internet, and that's why doing things like that are cool for me. That thing that I just did for the Lucky 13 StokerCon movie contest is an example of the kind of style that I would like to bring to all that kind of advertising, and I think it pops out from the norm. I think this is a place where my filmmaking skill can really come in handy in ways that most publishers don't have guys that can do that.
Let's bring that up. That's like my cue right there, the Lucky 13 contest. You had me watch this little trailer right before we came on to interview, and it's this Lucky 13 film contest. I was just hoping it was a movie you're making, because all the visuals and everything in that little short trailer are amazing. What does that come from? And talk about the contest too.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, all of that, all of the footage from there was from Stay at Home Dad, from Monsterland, there's one shot from Tales of Halloween. There's Hot Rod Worm in there. There's our promo for The Long Last Call, which is a book I wrote several years ago and a film I've been trying to make for like 10 years. And we shot like a couple minute long teaser for it one night in a crappy strip joint in North Hollywood. And also from my feature that still hasn't been made, Rose, the Bizarro zombie musical. There's all the zombie stuff is from that. And then there's also one shot from Human Furniture when the hot woman walks into the hotel room and shakes her shoulders out like she's about to fuck you up. And that is Deborah Gray, the author. So that's what, basically, Lucky 13 asked me if I would just do a little thing where I like sat down with the Skype and said, "Hi, I'm one of the judges for the Lucky 13 contest happening in Las Vegas on May 13th. And why don't you try and scare us by making a scary movie?" But I was like, "Hey, I've got an idea. How about if I make something snappy using all of this footage that I've directed and much of it with Andrew and much of it alone, and make something really fucking snappy." So I did, and everybody's like, "Wow, this is my argument." Just basically, rather than have me just sit there and tell you, "Hey, why don't you be in this contest? Why don't I show you why I love making horror movies, and then maybe you'll want to do it too."
That's
That makes sense?
Yeah, total sense. And it's sort of like, here's the bar. And there's great visuals in that. And I love that you bring up the stop motion stuff because, my God, I am by no means like a film connoisseur or anything like that. And these names, a lot of names you spit out like fly over my head, mean nothing to me. But man, if there's one thing I love and adore, it's like from the 80s, those horror movies and those silly stop motion pieces and bad makeup. That's great stuff. And in this modern day and age of filmmaking with CGI, I think so much of that is lost. And it's a pleasure to see that in what you're doing and bring it back. It's just great. I love it.
Thank you so much, man. We love that stuff too. I mean, I've been an animation freak since I was a little kid, watching old, 1940s Warner Brothers and Fleischer Brothers cartoons. I'm like 60 years old. I don't know if you know that. But yeah, I've always loved that stuff. And I'll tell you, I love when you integrate CG with stop motion and practical effects and basic physical filmmaking. CG can smooth certain things out and integrate them really, really well. But if you build nothing but CG, that is like way less interesting. It has no weight to it. I think animation, stop motion animation, it feels physical. You look at it and it's an impossible thing that's happening in front of you, but it's actually made out of something. It isn't just pixels and vapor. And yeah, it's fucking sweet. I love it.
Yeah, it's almost a lost art, and I'm glad that it's not being totally lost. And I'm glad that really people are passionate about movies and film. I think understand that there's still a need for those physical things, like you said. Like I think back to like a movie like Labyrinth, and God forbid they did that today without one single puppet. It would be a flop. Like who would even enjoy that? It would be a complete flop. In my estimation.
I'm sure they're going to try it, and I guess we'll see. But I'll tell you what, yeah, man, I fucking love puppets. I love Muppets. I love, the odds are really good that if we ever go out for dinner and I get leftovers and they put it in a box, that I'm going to draw a face on the box and then make it talk to the waitress.
Yeah.
Because I just love doing shit like that. That to me makes me happy.
Now I'd like to close out the filmmaking portion of our interview here by I got to explain that when I first came to Bizarro, one of the first things outside of discovering, the great literature there is out there for Bizarro, one of the first things I saw this is like, ooh, this is like, it's a little bit more than books. There's like a whole movement going on here because there were promotions you just brought up for Rosie, the Bizarro zombie musical. And my God, I sat there, you had these little teasers you had, with Carlton and Rose and all those guys doing these great, and I was getting so excited. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to see this. And you're putting out these pieces, and all of a sudden they went away. Am I ever going to get to see Rosie the musical?
I'll tell you what, man. We did our Kickstarter. We were able to shoot one big sequence, which is very much in that thing that you just saw, the hallway sequence with Rose going down the hall and the zombies coming up on either side, one dragging like a 50-foot length of intestine and the other with her ribs and the back of her head chewed off. We shot that. We built a bunch of great puppets, really great puppets, all of which I still have. We built a chunk of set. We paid for thousands of dollars worth of music that has already been recorded. Music, almost, I'd say 70% of the soundtrack has been recorded, and and then the rest of the money basically went to sending T-shirts and signed copies of my giant zombie anthology to people all over the country. But what we weren't able to do was use that to raise the remaining $200,000 that we needed. So we're $200,000 short of doing Rose. Anytime that $200,000 drops, we could make Rose for that. But the other thing that happened with Rose, it was really sad, man. It happened just as the economy was collapsing. And it also happened right at a point where everybody and his brother's dog had made a backyard zombie movie. And so the world was very saturated with zombie stuff, and the money was falling out. So it was bad timing all the way around. But as I like to say, Rose is not dead. She just smells funny. And it could come back up at any time. All we need is somebody saying yes. I'm hoping somebody's going to look at this trailer and go, for the thing for Lucky 13 and go, what is that zombie shit? I want to see that, and then we'd have something to talk about.
Yeah, I hope this podcast brings it up, because the actress you had to play Rosie. She seems so perfect for the part. Would she still be a part of it today?
Oh yeah, man. I would bring Chase McKenna back in a second. As far as I'm concerned, she is Rose, and all that would have to happen would be for somebody to say, here's the money.
Okay.
That's the hard thing about the difference between books and movies. I always say Stephen King, to write The Shining, it cost him $25 for paper, typewriter ribbons, and whiteout. For Kubrick to make that movie back in the 70s cost $25 million. So the difference between $25 and $25 million is pretty much the difference between writing a book and writing a film. And even if we could do Rose for, less than $1 million, for like $200,000, $300,000, and we could, and it would be awesome. I don't have $200,000 falling out of my ass right now.
I wish we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one way or another, I've been focusing on projects that seemed more likely to get people to support them, but Rose is always sitting right there, man. She is never off my list.
That's good. That's exciting, and I'm definitely excited to see what the stuff is that you have coming out too. I mean, everything that you do has that, like you said, it just has that twin, is that bizarre element, that thing when you see it. And I agree. So I can't wait to see what you put out. I have a couple more questions for you before we end the show.
Sure.
You're obviously, you got the author credits, you got editing credits, you got screenwriting, directing, producing credits. You even have some musical credits to your name. Tons of hats that you wear. Are you that guy? You're a Renaissance man? Do you wear all those hats at once, or do you kind of go in phases?
It does go in phases. I'll tell you, the thing I love about making movies is that you get to tell stories like a book. You have to integrate music like music, and then you get all these visuals, and you get to work with these actors. It really is the medium in which all of my contiguous media hats get to dance together in the same place. And I didn't write any music after Rose, so it's been about five years since I'd written any music. But I've written 5 songs this year, and and a lot of it is stuff that I want to integrate into one of the next film projects. So, yeah, I'm really hoping that this next year is going to be a place where I get to wear all of my hats stacked on my head at once and look really fucking ridiculous.
You know, when I talked to Danger, when I sat down with him, he couldn't say enough about you as a mentor to him, and as a guiding light to him. And I get that vibe from a lot of the younger writers that you're working with, that you're just leading them all down the proper path. So I'd like to sort of end this interview by asking you, what is the best piece of advice you could hand to any writer to send them in the right direction, guide them toward the light?
Oh, geez. Well, I'll tell you. What I'm sort of trying to do with all the people that I'm working with, particularly the younger ones, is I'm kind of trying to be the person I wish had been there for me when I was younger and trying to bust in, and just trying to be as helpful as possible and honest and supportive. In terms of what a writer needs to do, or any creative artist needs to do, I think be true to yourself. Don't change your voice because other people tell you to, because then you'll wind up with no voice at all. And really, really, really work at your craft. Work at it like it matters. If words are your business, fall in love with words, man. Fall in love with them to the point that you breathe them. I think about the great underground painter Robert Williams, and he says, I'm probably going to die from illnesses related to inhaling paints and paint cleaners and fumes and stuff. You can't be more of a fucking artist than that. I think the point of that is, if you're going to do it, do it up, and do it with a constant goal of improvement, of figuring out, of getting to a point of mastery. Getting to a point where you're a magician and these are your tools and this is how you make your magic, and you're not just waving a wand around and hoping it works. I think that art is dedication to craft, with your soul all over it. And yeah, so I wholly advise hanging on to your soul and using it as much as possible. The last piece of advice I have is, if it's not fun, why the fuck do it? This is supposed to be fun. I know that many people agonize over their art, and if that's really what has to happen, then I could never argue you out of it, or wouldn't even try to. Just saying that that when you make cool shit that you love, your life gets better and everybody else's does too. So do that and fuck everything else.
That's beautiful. John Skipp, I said at the beginning of this interview that it was an honor to have you. I think those words fall short of what you've just given us for the last hour. I can't express how important I feel the last hour has been. Just to be able to pick your brain in this amount of time is amazing.
Thank you so much, man. I was scared I was being boring, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And yeah, man, this was a real pleasure. And I can't thank you enough for supporting Danger and the other artists that you are, and just making Bizarro your thing, because Bizarro is a beautiful thing.
It truly is. And I wrote this down on my piece of paper in front of me, because you said it and the words were perfect. This is what I'm trying to do, and it's what you were talking about, book trailers. I am just trying to give my joyful testimony to the Bizarro industry and community. That's what I'm doing here with this podcast. So I thank you for lending your voice to us for an hour.
Thank you so much, man. Back at you.
John Skipp, Zongers. John fucking Skipp. I sincerely, deeply hope that you were removed even as half as much as I was right now. I mean, I've been podcasting since about 2012. I've talked to a great many writers on the podcast, both this one and my other one. I've never been so, I got the chills doing that interview at the end, and I just had this feeling like, man, that was just a really important interview. And I hope everyone out there is able to take away something. I think you're all going to walk away with some sort of deep philosophical boner. You know what I'm saying? That was awesome. Thanks very much to John Skipp for lending us his time, his valuable, precious time. He's doing so much shit. It's awesome that he took the time to talk to us on Bizzong. And with that in mind, Zongers, we must implore you. We're right here. We're at the last few days of March. We're heading into April, and it's very important that I push Project iRadio's Patreon. We are so close to reaching our goal of $300 that will meet our hosting costs for all the great podcasts on the Project iRadio network. We're so freaking close. If just a portion of you just give us $1 before April 1st, we're going to meet and or exceed our funding goal, and we will be able to bring you even more great programming on the Project iRadio network. So please, if you're going to give us $1, now is the time to do it. Just $1. If you do it for 1 month, that would be awesome. Just help us hit that goal of $300 a month. And then if you want to stick around, give us a couple of bucks. Give us $10. Great ebook subscription reward at the $10 donation level. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Brian Keene, Armand Rosamilia, Mark Tufo, the 3 guys with beards, Kelly Owen, all these great writers contributing their work to the ebook subscription plan. And just added, at the $20 level, you can get like basically a customized show. You request who you want to be on a special edition Project iRadio show, only for those who donate at the $20 level. You can get yourself a Brian Keene / 3 guys with beards / Bizzong episode just for you and all the other $20 contributors. And it can even be like a video cast. I mean, this is like an insane opportunity to like create your own podcast type of thing. So, I mean, for $20, if that's what you got laying around, if you want to just do it one time, just hit us up one time, $20, and you create your own insane fucking Project iRadio mashup show. That's the way to do it. There's great reward levels if you donate just $1 or more at patreon.com/Project iRadio. Please, if you have the means, give us $1. Until next time, Zongers, I keep talking about the other great shows on Project iRadio. You're dismissed and free to listen to some of these shows.
Armcast, dead, sexy horror podcast with host Armand Rosamilia, where he interviews horror authors, filmmakers, actors, actresses, that hot dog guy outside of Walmart, maybe even a Walmart greeter. Who knows? That's Armcast Podcast, exclusively on Project iRadio.
Hi, this is Brian Keene. I'm an international best-selling, award-winning horror novelist and comic book writer.
No comment!
Sir, what about the ending to Verizon?
Motherfucker!
My stories have been turned into movies. I've even spoken inside CIA headquarters.
Party no comment, don't you understand?
I've worked in this industry for 20 years and I know everybody. More importantly, I know where the bodies are buried. And now I'm telling you their location every week on the horror show.
You understand this?
Plus, we discuss the latest news in horror novels, movies, comics, and games, and interview the biggest names in the business.
This interview is over. No comment. The
Join us on The Horror Show, Thursday nights at 7 p.m., only on Project iRadio.
Brian Keane was also unavailable for comment.